We have to deal in things that we're capable of understanding. And then once we're over that filter, we have to have a business with some intrinsic characteristics that give it a durable competitive advantage. And then, of course, we would vastly prefer a management in place with a lot of integrity and talent. And finally, no matter how wonderful it is, it's not worth an infinite price. So we have to have a price that makes sense and gives a margin of safety considering the natural vicissitudes of life. That's a very simple set of ideas. And the reason that our ideas have not spread faster is they're too simple. The professional classes can't justify their existence if that's all they have to say. I mean, it's all so obvious and so simple. What would they have to do with the rest of the semester? We've always been opportunistic.
What does that mean?
Well, it's Carlyle. He said, the task of man is not to see what lies dimly in the distance, but do the duty that lies clearly at hand. And we are like Carlyle.
Do you see any great duties at hand right now?
No, but I think we've been pretty good at grasping things our duty impelled us to grasp, and it's worked way better than master planning. I have a deep distrust of master planning. People get to believing the plan because they created it.
So the chaos
and what's needed
theory
is the kind of propensity to disbelieve that by changing your previous conclusions. And we're very good at that, thank God.
Mm-hmm.
I have what I call an iron prescription that helps me keep sane when I naturally drift toward preferring one ideology over another. And that is, I say, I'm not entitled to have an opinion on this subject unless I can state the arguments against my position better than the people do who are supporting it. I think only when I've reached that state am I qualified to speak. Now you can say that's too much of an iron discipline. It's not too much of an iron discipline. It isn't even that hard to do. We have the mindset of the person that's buying the whole business at the price you would realize by multiplying the price we're paying by share by the number of outstanding shares. And we want the price for the whole business so calculated to look very attractive. So we like buying individual shares at a price that's lower than we think a rational person would pay if he could buy the whole business.
So for 50 years, you've continually read about these industries even though you have disdain for them.
Yes, I talked about patience. I read Barron's for 50 years. In 50 years, I found one investment opportunity in Barron's, out of which I made about $80 million with almost no risk. I took the $80 million and gave it to Lilo, who turned it into $400 or $500 million. So I have made $400 or $500 million out of reading Barron's for 50 years and following one idea. Now that doesn't help you very much, does it? I'm sorry, but that's the way it really happened. If you can't do it, I didn't have a lot of ideas. I didn't find them that easily, but I did pounce on one.
Which one was that? Which idea was that?
It was a little automotive supply company. Anyway, it was a cigar butt.
Is that K&W?
No, this was, I've forgotten the name of it, but it was the Monroe shock absorber and all that stuff. The stock was $1, and the junk bonds was paid 11 3/8%, were 35. And when I bought the junk bonds, they paid me the 35%, and they went right to 107 when they called. You know, it was, and then the stock went from 1 to 40, but of course I sold my stock at 15. But
so what did the article in Barron's say?
Yeah, what was it?
It said it was a cheap stock. My advice to you is to learn sometimes to keep your light under a bushel. One of my colleagues, also a #1 in his class in law school, a great success in life, clerk for the Supreme Court, etc., But he knew a lot, and he tended to show it as a very young lawyer. And one day, the senior partner he was working under called him in and said, "Listen, Chuck," says, "I want to explain something to you." He says, "Your duty under any circumstances is to behave in such a way that the client thinks he's the smartest person in the world. And if you've got any little energy or insight available after that, use it to make your senior partner look like the smartest person in the world. And only after you've satisfied those two obligations do you want your light to shine at all." Well, that may have been very good advice for rising in a large firm. It wasn't what I did. I always obeyed the drift of my nature, and if other people didn't like it, well, I didn't need to be adored by everybody. It was succeeding mightily on multiple fronts, and it was cheap in relation to what was plainly going to happen. That was a valuable insight. There are times when even a company as big as Coca-Cola is too cheaply priced by the market, considering what it's going to do for the shareholder. And there are times when we can figure that out, and there are times when we can't. And the times when we can figure it out, we tend to go in heavily. For many, many months, we were buying as much Coca-Cola as we could buy, roughly a third of the volume trading, every day for months. So we were very aggressive in buying into Coca-Cola. Another idea, and by the way, when I talk about this multidisciplinary attitude, I'm really following a very key idea of the greatest lawyer of antiquity, Marcus Tullus Cicero. And Cicero is famous for saying, "A man who doesn't know what happened before he's born goes through life like a child." Now, that is a very correct idea of Cicero's, and he's right to ridicule somebody so foolish as not to know what happened before he was born. But if you generalize Cicero, as I think one should, there are all these other things that you should know in addition to history. And those other things are the big ideas in all the other disciplines. And it doesn't help you just to know them enough so you could prattle them back on an exam and get an A. You have to learn these things in such a way that they're in a mental lattice work in your head and you automatically use them for the rest of your life. If you do that, I solemnly promise you that one day you'll be walking down the street and you'll look to your right and left and you'll think, my heavenly days, I'm now one of the few most competent people of my whole age cohort. I think our business experience helps our investment judgment and vice versa. And so I have no problem with that. What's happened, of course, is the investment portfolio, when we used to have these meetings decades ago, there would be more in common stock value in the portfolios of Berkshire than there was in the market capitalization of the whole country, the whole company. And that went on year after year after year. That has radically changed. Now most of the value is in controlled businesses. And the investment portfolio is something that looks more like the normal portfolio of an insurance company.
Is that a good thing?
Sure, sure. We always said that what we liked best was owning a wonderful business outright. And second best, we liked good ideas and securities. Mm-hmm. That has never changed. The skill that got Berkshire through one decade would not have sufficed to get it through the next decade with the achievements made. Without Warren Buffett being a learning machine, continuous learning machine, the record would have been absolutely impossible. The same is true at lower walks of life. I constantly see people rise in life who were not the smartest, sometimes not even the most diligent, but they are learning machines. They go to bed every night a little wiser than they were when they got up. And boy, does that habit help, particularly when you have a long run ahead of you. Your life for the next 3 weeks would be more pleasant if you went on heroin, but it would totally destroy you over the long pull. And that's what an economy does when it allows itself to be seduced by the potential for an idiot boom into allowing all this gross immorality and this craziness to take over. When I met Warren, he immediately started telling me how much better his way of making a living was than mine, and that I was too smart to stay in such a silly business as law practice when I could go into his business of running an investment partnership. And it took me about 2 or 3 years to realize he was right. When they ask Warren how he wants to be remembered, he wants to be remembered as a teacher. Well, who in the hell is saying that from the top of a company, from a record like Warren's? Why wouldn't I like being associated with that ethos?
How do you want to be remembered?
Well, I have a little different twist. I have less ambition than Warren at being a great teacher. I am trying to emulate my great-grandfather. When he died, they said about him, nobody envied the success so fairly won and wisely used. It's a simple philosophy. But wouldn't Wall Street have worked better if more people had tried to imitate my great-grandfather Ingham?